Come on in, come on up, come on over.
Hello and welcome to part 3.2 in the decks I'm covering under $45 in the series I'm doing to find my top 5 tarot decks that I got in 2023. If you're new here, head back to video 1.1 where you can see my rating criteria and my rating scale. Here's a little look at it as a reminder. If you are jumping in and you don't want to be spoiled as to the rankings so far of the decks we've covered, go back to video 1.1 now because I'm about to show the decks that we've covered so far and how they are ranking. In our last video, we didn't have any movement in the top 5. We just had one in our top kind of 10 slot here that stole the 8th place spot, which was the Tarot Apocalypsis, and that pushed the Cozy Witch down one more notch into 9th place. I'm going to cover the last few decks under $45, and then in the next video we'll cover the decks around $50. So let's get started. First deck on the list is the Cosmic Cycles Tarot. I got this back in March on eBay and I found it for $30. I saw this deck and had my eye on it. The current price seems to be $40, but I remember when I looked at it initially, when it first came out, I thought it was too expensive and it ended up being $80 or something with the shipping. And so I kind of put it on the wish list and on the back burner to look at down the line. I know there's a more upgraded version to this that they just released or are on the way to releasing, which has pink, I think, sides. But I think the current price for this kind of basic version is $40 right now before shipping. So let's look at card usability. This is Indie Deck cardstock. It's that really smooth matte cardstock. It's a little bit on the thicker side, so it is kind of a bit of a tougher shuffle than I like when we're looking at kind of rating decks as far as their shuffleability. This shuffles very well, like you'd have no complaints. But if we're comparing it side by side with like the low Scarabeo decks that rated really highly, it is kind of a bit of a tougher shuffle. The deck is a little bit thicker. So I think it's going to just get the smiling face for card usability. And I am going to give it a score of 77. So for versatility, this deck is very interesting in that it follows the kind of a story through this deck, like a very intentional story of these characters done in a very modern way. The guidebook is really good and the way it reads is very unique. As far as versatility though, I think this makes it a little bit less versatile in a way, because when I'm using this, I'm using it specifically because I want that thing that the deck does well and in that storybook way. So I'm not pulling it in to work with other decks. I'm working with it just by itself, and it's because I want this specific style of reading. So for versatility, I'm going to give it the unamused face, and I'm going to give it a score of 35. For energy and personal connection, I think this deck kind of lends itself to have a personal connection because in the way that we're following these characters through their lives, there is kind of like a bit of an emotional investment in what's happening with them. And the energy of the deck, I would say, is in the neutral zone. So, but I think for personal connection, it scores pretty highly. So I'm going to give it the smiling face again and a score of 76. So for readability, the titles are really clear. The suit names stay the same. And the guidebook is great. I wouldn't read this without the guidebook, only because the guidebook kind of offers what's special about this deck, but you certainly could. If you didn't have the guidebook and you wanted to just read this without it, it's certainly very, very readable. So I am going to give this the party face for readability because it has a fantastic guidebook. And also the cards can be read just by themselves. So I'm going to give the party face for readability and a score of 91. For uniqueness, I think this deck is quite unique. And I think there are other decks that do similar things, but not many. I think the way this deck does it is quite unique. I'm going to give it the party face for uniqueness and a score of 92. That is going to give the Cosmic Cycles Tarot a score of 371 points and put it in 10th place on the list so far. The next deck on the list is the Forager's Daughter Tarot. I got this back in September in a trade. Its current price is $40. So this is a kind of glossy indie deck with the gold gilding. Obviously on the lower end of the price scale for indie decks, I would say at right now. It's got kind of a linen cardstock, but not quite. It shuffles really, really well. I kind of wish though that the gold gilding weren't there. I feel like it would shuffle better. It wasn't there, but it does shuffle fantastic. So I am going to give it the party face for card usability, and I'm going to give it the lowest end of the party face because I feel like this gold gilding is a little bit kind of sharp on my hands, but not a lot, but just when we're rating it and comparing it to other things, it doesn't score as highly because of that. So I'm going to give it a score of 80 for card usability. For me, for versatility, this deck has a lot of versatility. I think it pairs really well with a lot of different things. And the guidebook is really good. So for versatility, I'm going to give it a smiling face and a score of 64 points. For energy and personal connection, I think the energy of this deck is good. I haven't made a personal connection with it. It almost feels like it's keeping itself a little bit at arm's length. So for energy and personal connection, I'm going to give it a neutral face and a score of 44 points. For readability, I think it reads fairly well, and the guidebook is very good in the details that it gives you about what's going on in the cards. I can see how physically reading it, the font could be a little bit challenging because it's kind of a strange font, and it is in that kind of banner at the bottom. So I'm going to give this the neutral face for readability and a high neutral face score of 57. So for uniqueness, I think there's quite a number of decks that do this exact same thing, but it is unique within those. So I think I'm going to give it the neutral face on uniqueness, and I'm going to give it a score of 56. That gives the Forager's Daughter a total number of points of 301 and put it at 32 on our list so far. Next on the list, we have the Taro Frogs. This was a Kickstarter deck. When I saw this on Kickstarter, I got very, very excited. I texted all my friends and told them how adorable these frogs are. I don't know what it was about this particular frog deck, but I just fell in love with it. And then when I got the Kickstarter, it did not disappoint. It did not disappoint. So I got it, April was when the Kickstarter ended, and the price was $40. And I think that's the current price. And so the cards come in this, it comes in this cute box with the gold stamping on the box. These are the cards. They're a little bit bigger than playing card, like maybe a little bit taller, but the same width. These are the backs, gold stamped, gold gilding on the sides. So I'm going to very much try to give the give the Taro Frogs an unbiased rating. But spoiler, I just love them. Okay, so we have card usability. in fairness, they're a nice size, but the deck is quite thick and the gilding is chunky. So there's a little bit of clumping when I shuffle. They can be shuffled fairly easily. But I'm going to give the Taro Frogs a neutral face for card usability. I do really like the size, but it is not the most enjoyable. Shuffle, poor Frogs. Look at him. He's sad because he wanted party face for everything. But it can't be. It can't be. So we're going to give the neutral face for card usability and a score of 37. For versatility, I mean, it isn't that versatile. You got to be in the mood for frogs. You got to be in the mood for this deck particularly. Is it going to work in a special spiritual practice? Probably not. Probably not. But it is going to do a job very well. And that is make me smile every single time I touch these cards. Does that make it versatile? No. So for versatility, I'm going to give this the unamused face because it's not that versatile. It does its thing. It's all frogs. So unamused face, and I'm going to give it a score of 25. So for energy and personal connection, Taro Frogs wins the day on this one. Energy is fantastic. These frogs are amazing. The personal connection off the charts from our first meeting. This is, this is big time. This is big time happiness here. So energy and personal connection, we're going to give this one the party face. And I'm going to give this a score of 100 because it does take a lot. It does take, I might seem like a happy-go-lucky person, but to give me that like excitement and joy, it does take quite a bit. And these Taro Frogs have pulled it off. So 100 points for energy and personal connection and the party face. For readability, the deck reads very well. I mean, everything is kind of standard. The guidebook is very limited, just are like kind of 4 keywords for upright, 4 for reversed. So for readability, I'm going to give it the neutral face, and we're going to give it right in the middle, a score of a 50. And we move on to uniqueness. Is this deck, here's the question, is this deck unique? Is it unique? I mean, I have a lot of decks that are, kind of fun. Fun, cute. Do I have any that are all frogs in that? No. Unique? I don't know. I'm going to just give it the neutral face for uniqueness, and I'm going to give it a high neutral face score of 57. It gives the Taro Frogs a score of 269 points and puts it into tied 43rd place on the list. Now, I think it's important. Now we've gone through quite a few decks here and rated quite a few. And Taro Frogs, if I was just picking off the shelf, like, what are your favorite decks this year? I would pick the Taro Frogs. So I'm kind of thinking, does my rating scale work? Am I finding my favorite deck? Now, here's the thing. Taro Frogs, I love to play with. It makes me smile. I look at it. It's a favorite. Now, have I used it since I got it? No. I think 1 or 2 times. So when I'm looking at my favorite decks, yes, it is my favorite to look at and play with. But am I using it a lot? No. So that's why it's in 43rd place. And I think that's why kind of my rating scale is going to pull out the decks that are not just my favorite and make me smile and are fun, but are actually usable decks in my collection. And as we get to the end of the list and then we find what the top 5 are, it'll be really interesting to see, are these the favorite? At the end of 2024, after another whole year, are these the ones that get the most use? Are these the ones that turn out to be the favorite because they actually have the best, personal connection, are the most usable, are the most unique, are the most used deck, are the most enjoyable to shuffle, and ultimately get the most use in my collection, and so therefore are a favorite. So anyway, just a side discussion, on to the next. The next deck on the list is the Wandering Moon Tarot. This is one that was sitting in my Etsy cart for a long time, and in November at the end of the year, I think it could have been in my cart the entire year. It was an either get out or come home kind of moment, and so the price was $42, and that is the current price. And in November, I was really feeling that vibe when in one of the first videos I talked about the Wanderer's Tarot. I bought this deck and that deck at the same time, and that deck is white on black, and this deck is black on white, completely black and white deck, and so I bought them as kind of a team, but this is the indie. The other one is mass market, so this one was twice the price. Let's have a look at card usability. It's that, I would say, lesser quality indie cardstock. We have the kind of rainbow silver gilding on the sides here. And it's not the most pleasant shuffle. It can certainly be done. I have some chipping already on some of the cards. I don't like the way it shuffles. It's not comfortable. It certainly can be done. So it's not in the category of unshuffleable, but I'm not looking forward to shuffling this one at all. So I'm actually going to give this one the unamused face for card usability, and I'm going to give it a score of 26. So for versatility, this deck falls into that category that we've seen a couple times so far, in that its black and white color palette is making it less versatile than some other decks. At the same time, this one does offer a bit more of a blank canvas than some of the others that we've seen, so it can kind of blend in with other decks that have a lot more color, be used as, you know, the backup player. So for versatility, I'm going to score it a little bit higher than I would normally for the black and white decks, just because I feel like it offers a little bit more versatility than most of them do. So I'm going to give this the smiling face for versatility and a score of 71. For energy and personal connection, there is something really gentle about this deck, and the energy feels really good. There's kind of a warmth to it, which is surprising in a deck with so much white space. And so for energy and personal connection, I'm going to give it the smiling face as well, and a score of 77. For readability, I think the cards are really readable. And even though it's a cursive font, it's really clear. So physically, it's really quite easy to read. The suit names have changed. The pentacles are moons. But the guidebook is actually really good. It gives a little kind of description of what we're seeing on the cards. It addresses the image. And then there's kind of a divinatory meaning below. And I really like how it reads. So for readability, I'm going to give it the smiling face and a score of 74. For uniqueness, I think this deck is actually really unique. In the artwork, when you look up close up, this is all little dots that make up the artwork. And I think it's neat. And I think the focus on that lunar energy too as well, and the crystals, I do think this is a very unique deck. And although it looks similar to a few others, including the white version of that Wanderer's Tarot, when you get up close and personal and use it in readings, it is quite unique within that kind of, that black and white category. The cards too on the back, they have a little shine on those stars, which is really neat, a really great addition to kind of add that. So I'm actually going to give this I think a low party face for uniqueness, and I'm going to give it a score of 80. That is going to give the Wandering Moon Tarot a total number of points of 328 and put it at 23rd on the list so far. The next deck on the list is the Fantasy Garden Tarot. I got this back on eBay in October for $42. That's its current price. And it's in a 2-part box. There's the backs. It's the glossiest deck that we've had so far in this video. The cards are a nice size though, a little bit smaller than tarot size. The glossiness does make it nice to shuffle. The cards slip together really well. There's no stickiness. It is a little bit on the floppy side, so if I do a faster riffle shuffle, I'm going to get those cards caught up together. So I really have to kind of take my time with it, which I don't mind too much, but it definitely requires some thought to kind of slow it down a little bit so those cards have time to drop into that riffle shuffle there. So I'm going to give it the smiling face for card usability. I'm going to give it a score of 65 points. So for versatility, this deck is pretty much an RWS clone. It has its kind of own take on it, and it kind of feels like you're kind of in this medieval world, kind of in these castle grounds. So within that aesthetic, it's pretty versatile. I don't see me using it in special spiritual practices necessarily, but I think its versatility is very high. So I'm going to give it a smiling face for versatility as well, and a score 76. So for energy and personal connection, I think the deck has really good energy, and I have made a personal connection with it. I feel excited to use it. I love the ballpoint pen kind of art style. I think it makes it pretty unique, and that makes me excited to use it. So I'm going to give it the smiling face score for energy and personal connection, and a score of 78. For readability, the guidebook is in 2 languages and it's pretty basic. So as far as readability, it's really what we're seeing on the card. But I think that is very readable. I think that anybody who kind of already knows the tarot and is not using, doesn't have the need for a guidebook would be able to read this fairly well. I think if you are a new reader and you use this little guidebook, you'd get enough. And so for readability, it's pretty easy. So I'm going to give it the smiling face for readability score of 68 points. For uniqueness, I think this deck has 2 parts to it. And one side, it's not unique at all, because it's just, it's an RWS clone. It hasn't really strayed too far away from that. And on the other hand, it's very unique in its art style, and some of the kind of scenes that we're seeing make the readings more expansive than you would get with many RWS clones. So I'm going to give it the smiling face as well for uniqueness, and I'm going to give it a score of 79. That gives the Fantasy Garden Tarot a total of 366 points, in 12th place on the list so far. Next deck on the list is the Anne of Green Gables Tarot. I got this back in that eBay lot that I got all those decks in. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly how much I paid for this deck on its own, but I'm saying around $25. The current price is $43. This is available on Game Crafter. This was weirdly on my wish list. I didn't order it. Sometimes the ones on Game Crafter I kind of forget about. So when I saw this in that tarot lot, I was pretty excited to have it. So let's have a look at card usability. So we've got the Game Crafter card stock. So the shuffle is really good. It's really nice. It has that little snapback in the riffle shuffle. It's really pleasant to shuffle. And yeah, I'm enjoying that. So let's give it the party face for card usability and a score of 96. For versatility, this deck isn't really that versatile. I have to be in the mood for this specific deck in order to kind of pull it out. I think it could read well in a general reading. I think if you were reading it for other people, I don't know. You don't know if they have the Anne of Green Gables connection. So, but I think that if you didn't know that, it kind of has these really wholesome vibes about it. But for me, for versatility, it isn't really that versatile. So I'm going to give it the unamused face and a score of 34. So for energy and personal connection, I've really enjoyed this deck. I think it has really good energy. It makes me smile. I feel like there's a personal connection there. So I'm going to give it a smiling face and a score of 67. For readability, there's no guidebook with this deck. And the font can be a little bit difficult to read. So for physical readability, it isn't the best. The titles sometimes move around, like this one. It's kind of a little bit too far up, so it's almost blocking that. Some of them are a little too low down. The font kind of boldness and size changes a little bit, and it can be a little bit jarring as far as readability. I think that it is easy to read, though. And I don't think anyone who kind of had a standing tarot knowledge would have any difficulty reading this deck. It doesn't go kind of in wild directions where you need a lot of brain power to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to give it the neutral face for readability and a score of 49. For uniqueness, this is the only Anne of Green Gables tarot as far as I know. I think it's fantastic that somebody took the time to kind of put this together. I think the art style is pretty unique. I think it reads really well, Anne of Green Gables. Like, even though, we're not seeing the actual, illustration, I love the take on it. So for uniqueness, I'm actually going to give this the party face, and I'm going to give it a score of 90. That is going to give the Anne of Green Gables Tarot a total of 336 points and put it 24th on the list between the 5th Spirit Tarot and the Earth Whispers Tarot. The next deck on the list is the Pastel Journey Tarot, and this is going to be the last one of our decks under $45. So story time on this deck. So I bought this deck on Amazon. It is an indie deck, though, back in March for $44. That's its current price. And the reason I got this deck, because this deck is not my aesthetic at all. I feel like I was feeling I wanted to bring in this particular energy. And the reason for that is because I had gotten an Oracle deck that also had that energy that I was looking to pair. And that's this little guy here. It's called the Petite Pastel Oracle. And they just pair so perfectly together. They're a matched pair. They stay together. And I use these two just when I'm feeling like, when I want to bring in this specific energy, whatever this is. I'm not even sure what this particular style choice is, but that's when this deck comes out. So let's have a look at it, and look at card usability. We've got the shiny silver holographic gilding here. The cards feel a little bit bigger than tarot size. So let's have a look and see how it shuffles. It's pretty stiff. It shuffles okay. It's very similar in cardstock actually to the Wandering Moon, where it's kind of that stiffness, but when you get in there, it shuffles pretty well, but I'm not looking forward to shuffling in. It's not the most pleasant, but it certainly does shuffle well. So I'm going to give it this the neutral face, and I'm going to give it a high neutral face score of 57. So for versatility, as I've just said, this deck really only serves this purpose when I'm in this particular mood. So not very versatile at all. It just does the job that I want it to do. I'm not pulling it into other types of readings. Although I think you could, but I think it might be a little bit difficult to pair with things because this really is a very specific color palette that it's working with. So for versatility, I'm going to give it the unamused face and a score of 21. So for energy and personal connection, I do feel a personal connection with this deck. I think its energy is really good. So I am going to give it the smiling face for energy and personal connection and a score of 60. It reads really pretty well. The guidebook does go into, a bit of detail. The actual readability of the guidebook, the font size in the guidebook is like incredibly small, which makes it a little bit difficult to read the guidebook, but the guidebook offers more than I would think it was. And does it get bonus points for having the shiny building on the guidebook? I don't know. I don't know. So for readability, I'm going to give it the neutral face and a score of 56. So for uniqueness, this deck is pretty unique. There isn't anything that I have decks that are kind of similar to this, but there isn't anything quite exactly like this. This is bringing in a very, very specific energy for me. And so for uniqueness, I think I'm going to give it, I'm going to give it the party face, but very low party face score of 80. That is going to give the Pastel Journey Tarot a total of 274 points and put it 47th on the list so far. So that's it. We have completed our decks under $45. Let's have a look at the current rankings so far and see if there was any movement there. In the next video, in part 4, I'm going to be covering all the decks around $50 as we get close to figuring out my top 5 favorite decks of 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you're enjoying this series, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.